Right, lots of fanning about, but I think we're actually live. I think we are actually live. Good evening, welcome. A little change to usual proceedings. I'm gone live on my wall today. In the past, I've been broadcasting these comments, these talks over on multiple pages. One is Inspire and Be Inspired, which tonight's topic is based on, and the other is the Soulful House Mafia. Now, what I've found out over the last few weeks, the last few months, is that broadcasting on those pages doesn't really give me any benefits whatsoever, and trying to reach out to more viewers is actually quite difficult. I started off the live videos many months ago trying to combat this issue, and I had the idea to try going live on my own profile to see if it would work, and already I can see that we've got more viewers than we usually would have over on the pages. So good evening and welcome. The topic of tonight's conversation is brum as fuck. Excuse my profanity. This is part two. Part one was an incredible conversation with Jim Ryan and Mr. Lee Fisher. And tonight I'm going to click a button. I've 30 seconds before we went live, I had some issues. So this is going to work. I know it's going to work. Yes, there they are. We have Frenchie and Bruce Q. Now, we started off doing a sound and vision check earlier, and it basically consisted of Frenchie trying to figure out which was his left and his right, getting into the centre of the screen. Would you say that was a fair recollection of what went on earlier?
Judgment, Andy. It's a fair judgment. But we're here
now. So I've got Frenchie and Bruce Q, two living legends from the Birmingham area. I'm just going to say, if anybody is watching, I can see that comments are coming up live, but for some crazy reason, they're not showing up in the window that I spent hours getting to work earlier. So, gentlemen, bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to do something to get the comments out so I can actually read them, and we can have some kind of conversation, because we want this to be as interactive as possible, don't we, really? We want people to join in. We want people to talk to us and ask you any questions on anything that they're talking about. Okay, so we've got Tam Brown with us, Justin Bond, who has been giving us some great props earlier. Also, we got Cliff Williams in sunny Lanzarote, nice one. And Justin says, "Wow, Frenchie never ages." So that's I think that's a fair comment as well. So all these crazy technical issues, trying to get the comments over into this wall here where I can see. That should work now. Eventually, he says. Right, so gentlemen, you can see me, you can hear me, and if I stop messing around with the cameras, you're there. So the whole point of this evening, talking to two guys who I class as definite legends in and around Birmingham, I'm going to sit here and pretty much listen to everything that you've got to say, but I'm quite selfishly going to frame the whole conversation around my experiences in Birmingham, and I'll explain why. Because you have both got extensive histories. There's no way that we're going to be able to cover all of the bits and pieces, the nooks and crannies in this short interview that we're going to conduct tonight. So what I want to do is I want you to help me fill in some blanks in my timeline of the experiences that I used to go out and enjoy, and then also that'll set us up to have other conversations at other times, talk about other things. Within this conversation, we're definitely going to encompass the things that are very close to your heart, some very key factors, some very key moments. So I'm going to open up the floor by again welcoming you both along. Bruce, how are you, bro? You okay?
I'm very good. Thank you for having us, Andy. A real pleasure. Been a while.
It's been a long while, mate. We've had some good times together, you and I, out and about.
Yeah, over the years, yes, definitely. Frenchie and I were just talking about the first time I ever met you.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that
at some point. So what I want to do is, you gentlemen have 1 or 2 years on me. I was born in 1970. Frenchie, if you would like to tell me the year that you were born.
1958, 23rd of May, 1958.
Okay.
63.
So you're 63. So you definitely don't look like it. And move to, there you go. Move to the side just a little bit. So when you would have been, cutting shapes on a dance floor or heading out and about, let's talk about the age of 15, 16, 17. So we're talking 1969, the year I was born, when you were 17, right? Tell me about when you were 17, 18, what was going on in Birmingham for you?
Well, to be totally honest, at that period of my life, I was working in Lewis's
Okay.
as a porter. But that was while I was studying, doing sixth form studies, but also as well, musically, myself, my brothers, and a few friends was involved in, funny enough, sound systems, and we used myself and especially Robin Smith, who's quite a big wig in childcare for world now. He's we used to go to Barbarella's, Rebecca's. It was more like a reggae soul thing.
Okay.
So that was, and I was heavily influenced by sound systems, funny enough, during that period as well. So I used to enjoy like just Shaka, Mafia Tone, Quakers, all those sort of things. But what
Okay, so
happened,
you're throwing names at me there that I'm not, I wouldn't have been familiar with many, many years ago. So are these people who moved into Birmingham, or they were from in and around the Midlands, from London? Are these?
no, there was Birmingham people. So those sound systems that I mentioned were like Birmingham and London sound systems that used to come to the city and do sound clashes, because that's what I used to do. And I used to go to clubs, if I remember right, it was like Rebecca's, which at that time was owned by the Fugels. Rebecca's, Barbarella's, and they had 3 floors, 2 floors, and they used to do concerts there where I seen like Light of the World. Oh, I can't even remember now. High Tension. I can't remember, but and dancing competitions. So there was a combination which I didn't know at the time, that a lot of the soul boys used to go there, because I thought it was only just me and a handful of friends that used to go to those places. But I was shocked to find out at that time a lot of us had the reggae influences, of course, because of our parents and our peers, like older brothers and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't know, but it's something that I kind of like embraced.
Okay. So you were going out to all of those kind of parties.
Oh, God, yeah.
So Bruce, if you can put a timeline, how long into Frenchie's life was it before you burst onto the scene?
Well, I was actually born a few years after Frenchie. I was born in 62.
Okay.
And I was born and brought up in Balsall Heath, right in the heart of Birmingham. Balsall Heath back then was quite rough. There was a blues den, as we used to call them, at the top of the road, at the top of Court Road, where I used to live. I think it was 91 or 93, and there was these massive speakers, like, sound system speakers that used to be out there with these big woofers and bass bins. And I must have been, probably 7, 8 years old, so I'd go to the shop and they'd be playing all this stuff, and we're talking sort of late 60s. So I'd hear all this stuff and thinking, geez, just the bass line used to hit me. But up until then, I was into people like Lalo Schifrin, Leonard Bernstein, who did the sound score for, West Side Story, Gershwin, all those. That was me. Ella Fitzgerald, etc. That was where really my roots were from. Then I discovered, obviously, bass lines in the late 60s. Then I discovered people like James Brown. My father used to have a cafeteria on the Edward Road, so we're talking about, 1972, 73. And there was a guy called Kenny who used to bring in 7-inch records and used to put them into the jukebox. And he'd brought in some soulful funk and whatever. And that really got me hooked. It was from there that I thought, wow, probably, 10 years old. And then I'd heard in 73, Kool and the Gang, the Wild and Peaceful album. And I really didn't know anything about the genre of music or whatever. I just knew about the bass lines, and it was uplifting, and I heard funky stuff. And that just tripped me. That really just it really had a big impact on me, the Kool and the Gang funky stuff, 12. a few months after that, the Birmingham Central Library opened, and they used to have a music department, the old one, the one they've demolished now, and they had a music department with records that you could pull out records and play. And anyway, there was this album that I'd seen. Miles Davis on the corner had all these funky characters on, which were kind of very similar to the people that I'd seen in Borsall Heath around, top of where the cannon was, etc. And I was intrigued by it. Went to the decks, put it on, and he just tricked me. And I thought, I need this album. And I think I was about 11 years old at the time. I saved up every penny I had. Dinner money that I used to get from my mum and dad, I used to save it. I wouldn't spend it on dinner. And we used to do things, what was called paddy punching at school, where they would punch you in the stomach, and if you could take the punch, they'd give you 10 pence. So me being desperate for the record, I used to stand there tensing my stomach, and that was like the advent of Bruce Lee as well. Okay. So everybody was doing the kicks and the punch and all. So I was standing there taking punches from everyone. Sort of, I'd sometimes make 70p or 50p or whatever. Saved my money up. Went to HMV on, Corporation Street, which is not there anymore, and bought my first record, which was Miles Davis on the corner. So I was about 12 years old. Second album that I saved up to buy was the Kool and the Gang, Wild and Peaceful. So that kind of led me onto a journey right into then learning about James Brown. And there was, a friend of mine who introduced me to a guy called Grenville who used to live on Canal Road. And he had a sound system, but he was really into his funk, so he knew all about James Brown and all that Lakeside, etc. He started playing all this stuff, and I thought, I really need this. Where can I get this? And he directed me towards Don Christie's on the Ladypool Road. So after school, Don Christie's every Friday. I was a little, Asian lad amongst all these brothers, and they'd call me Little Cha-Cha Man. All right? They did that. And that's when I really started buying all my, 7-inch records, and I was just obsessed from there. I was either doing drawings or paintings for people to make money, or getting punched to make money, just so I could buy records.
You've set yourself wide open now for when people see you next time. You better start getting them abs ready. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm into CDs now, so I don't buy vinyl anymore. So that was technically,
you don't need that many.
That.
You don't need that many. Yeah. So Frenchie, obviously, the passion for the music was there from an early age for everyone.
Well, funny enough, Bruce reminded me of something because I forgot all about it.
You weren't punching me by any chance, were you, French?
No, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. But funny enough, when I started working at Lucy's, I was 16, and there was a record shop over the road. I used to go there on my break with my workmates. So every Thursday, I'd go and tend that record box, and it was owned by Graham Wall.
Right.
And my first records I bought from, if I remember right, was Lonnie Liston Smith, Song for the Children, Trinidad, John Davis Orchestra, something like that. Flipping out, I'm ashamed to say this.
John Gibbs.
That's
John
it,
Gibbs.
It's demented. John Gibbs. The Gibson Brothers, Cuba. Please forgive me for that. And there was a couple of other records, but I can't remember now. But also as well, at that time, there was venues such as Top Rank and also the Rainbow, where they used to play a bit of funk, a bit of boogie. So the dancing style then was shuffling. Mm-hmm. So things like your Eddie Kendricks, your James Brown, your Creative Source, all that sort of stuff was around that time. And I really started my record buying on my own while I was working at Lewis's. Every Thursday, I'd go across the road to buy records. And at the time as well, I was dating someone. She came from a bit of a funky background. And it's going to sound bad how I say this. I swiped her copy of Lost,
Rinder and Lewis.
And also, what was it? I can't remember. But what it has done, I forgot all about that. So that started my journey into the musical, but also as well, what really transformed me more so on the soul side than on the reggae side was when my friend, he used to have a band, and there was from Erdington, funny enough, medium wave, but at this stage, I was called Caricombe. And
Slightly move over to the side a little bit because you're moving ever so slightly. Oh, there you go.
okay.
That's better. There you go. Carry on. Sorry, McLean.
They did a gig at the Mayfair in Birmingham, and it was the first time I seen the jazz funk scene properly for myself. And at that time, Ronnie Harris, Gary's Gang, Showtime, and things like that was the big records at that time. That was just a few. And watching these guys dance, watching the atmosphere, the dress, the charisma, it was breathtaking. And what was interesting for me, I felt as though I found my calling. So going around with my mates, all these reggae heavy dub sessions. But when I went to that session in particular, I really found my calling for soul music.
So let me just ask you, because I've listened to everything that you said, but I got slightly preoccupied trying to get all of these comments up. Are we still in the mid-70s now? 74,
yes,
75 kind of time?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
16 to 18.
Brilliant.
Yes.
I mean, as I say, both of you have got such incredible stories to take us back to how things progressed. I want to draw reference to, and say hi to Angel, also to Clint Jones. He says he saw you, spent many hours on a Friday and most of his wages with you. We'll talk about that very soon. Justin says Graham War, legend. Yeah, I got to know Graham, as we all do, later on, and I didn't realise how much of an actual legend that he was.
Absolutely.
How influential, how important he was. I've listened to people who I respect highly talk with nothing but admiration and praise for him and his involvement in the UK music scene, you know.
Yeah.
He was a game changer, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, Graham. I would like to sit and you know, hear stories, hear more stories. And then we got Black Wax as well. So hi, Steve. Anyone else that's watching, if you want to leave any comments as we're talking, then please do. So let's try and let me try and direct the conversation some way if I can. So you mentioned about you found your calling, you found your home with the jazz dancers and the circuit. Can you put any names to any of the DJs who were kind of doing things back then?
The DJs at the time was Graham War. What I came across, Graham War, Colin Curtis, Sean Williams,
Dave Till.
To be fair, because I was a family person at the same time, so I didn't really go out much because I had a young family. So those are the core people that influenced me as far as say like music, and then the all-dayers around that time and certain gigs, you know.
So you say about the all-dayers. So let me ask you then about the all-dayers. Are you talking about, were there other all-dayers? I was going to say, were there other all-dayers over then at the Powerhouse? And was it the Powerhouse yet, or was it the Locarno still?
It was Locarno.
Because my mum and dad used to go to the. They always tell me about they used to go to the Locarno, you know, for their nights out kind of thing.
Yeah. So the Locarno, I mean, Bruce can reinforce this with me. I mean, Locarno Jazz Funk All Day, as far as Birmingham is concerned, was quite relevant in our history. I know you had things like Top of the World and say like with Manchester, Nottingham and all that things, but as far as Birmingham was concerned, Locarno was key, and then you had nightclub called Chaplin's, which Graham War was the DJ. Now, Chaplin's interlinked with Romana at a slightly later stage. They was both game changers as far as the musical history in Birmingham was concerned. And also, I have to say this, that the people involved, like the dancers, the DJs at that time, they made a massive impression as far as say like the music, the jazz funk scene, the interpretation of music, how it should be played. And like,
so let me ask you a question then. How integrated was the scene back then? What was the split with regards to black and white
ethnicities?
Crowds? Yeah, ethnicities.
Well, put it this way, from where I recall, there was probably half a dozen of non-blacks on the scene.
Okay.
I was probably the only Asian guy on the scene, I know that for sure. Like French said, I remember walking into Chaplin's the first time, seeing Rick and Ty, Errol T, the Baptists, all these guys who, you know, they just blew me away. I was probably about, 15, 16 years old, and I was kind of shuffling a bit because I'd watched people like Gene Kelly, the Nicholas brothers, and all these. I was into martial arts, so all that was very inspiring. So doing the splits and all that, and you kind of go there and you're thinking, wow, these guys are actually dancing like the guys I watch on, you know, on the screen, and they were so fluid, Carl and Lance, and it was another world. It was like watching magic. Honestly, it was like watching something unbelievable that is absent now. Personally, I think there was a lot of soul then that is not there. I think we're making shapes now. We're kind of more consumed by data rather than emotion and sincerity and soulful expression.
Let's not get swayed down that route. So,
but yeah, anyway,
it was predominantly black.
Yeah, it was predominantly black, and even to the point where that's why I actually started off my own clubs for exactly that. You'd walk to the door, and I'd be with my friends, and they'd go, "Sorry, lads, wrong dress. Sorry, lads, members only." Then you'd see somebody else, and it wasn't, you know, long before you kind of figured out, you know, they obviously don't want us there. And we, to be honest with you, a lot of us at the time didn't realise. I certainly didn't realise what the issue was. It was only years later that I kind of looked back in hindsight and understood what that was about. It was just like, oh, maybe we're too young, or I really didn't understand.
So at this point, or John Bright Street, was that alive and kicking now, or are we still not nowhere near?
Barbarella's and all those clubs.
Barbarella's, Rebecca's.
Yeah. Those were active, and that's where people like High Tension, Brass Construction, all the funk bands used to come on live. Okay. And they were all funny enough, there was more. I'd say there was probably more white girls in the black clubs than there were white guys, respectively. Mm-hmm. You know?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Because I think the white girls took to the music and the culture quicker than the white guys. There was a lot of friction. We're talking at the sort of height of the National Front and all that kind of stuff.
I can tell you so many stories from that I've heard from my mum, particularly, you know, being in a mixed relationship.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so where's the conversation? I'm just sitting, enjoying it. Where's the conversation take us next then?
Well, I'd like to add a few points on there because, like, with what Bruce reinforced about very much the multicultural scene with the black and white scene, the club scene, the important thing what from all over the country, how they looked on Birmingham, particularly these guys travelling to Manchester, to London, all this sort of thing, the style of dress, the dance, the interpretation of music, and also as well, what you got to realise, all the music, disco, funk, soul, was all played in one room. It wasn't like in different facets, like you had a soul room, a disco room, a jazz room. It was all in the same. Mm-hmm. So everybody interpreted the music, and it made it very, very special. And to be fair, looking at it at that time as an outsider, I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. You know, I was never a dancer per se, so it's like looking at these guys that can do their thing. You know, even today at the stage of life I'm at now, I'll always look at those guys and think, God, they did something really special for us.
Absolutely, they were the blueprint of what's happening now. Any soul club that is going on now, certainly within Birmingham, the Midlands area. These guys were the ones who initiated it. They were the segue to where we are today.
Okay, and that, so when you say these guys, just bring me back to where we were. Are you talking about the dancers particularly, or
it was really all about the dancers. Like I said, Errol T, Rick and Ty, Lance and Carl, the Baptist brothers, and you know, people like Phyllis and all. They were all the. As far as I was concerned, from my perspective, they were the hub, and they kind of had a style about them, which then moved on to, there used to be a shop called Goggles. I keep thinking Google, but it was Goggles on the Bridge Link, where we're talking kind of like later in the 70s now, when, I'd got into the dancing thing in the mid-70s and got into the funk and the brass construction, but then into the, what I'd call moving into the jazz funk era, which was post kind of the funk era. And when the jazz funk era came, there was a kind of a divide for a little while, because jazz funk was a bit more fluid, it was a bit more effeminate, it had a different vibe, where the funksters were a bit more aggressive. And certainly from Birmingham, in comparison to London or Manchester, we had a different aggressive edge. And whether that was, because of the geographic structure of where we were, I don't know whether, the working class.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself by asking this question, but having ventured around the country myself, eventually on coach trips and everything, but Birmingham was very tribal in the fact that when you would go and
absolutely
there were challenges on the dance floor. Other cities didn't really have that kind of.
No, there wasn't that.
Well, I would disagree with that. But then again, I don't want to come too far forward.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We can roll backwards and forwards if it's relevant.
Yeah. But what I would say to that was that even at that time in the late 70s, I mean, I didn't go myself, but there was coach trips to, say, your Castanellis, there was coach trips to your Top of the World, and, and it was like what you said, it was like a tribal thing where guys basically was going there to do their thing.
So the whole, are you there? Birmingham, is that purely a Birmingham thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what you found as well is that, it's going to sound mad how I say this. It's like a sex trip for guys. They could dance well, they can dress well, they can present themselves well. And people latched onto that. People are, they shone to that. And where like London now had its own thing where they brought their own style into. Birmingham had its own edgy style. Birmingham's always been classed as edgy, whereas Nottingham's always been classed as a bit poppy. And Manchester was more like a bit more connoisseur-y. Okay. So, all the different cities had their own slants, their own edge.
So we would go en masse, or Birmingham would go en masse around the country. Was that the same? I know people travelled from out of town into London, but did you find large groups of people coming into Birmingham, large coach trips?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, can I just make a point? Sorry, I was talking about funk and the jazz funk era, and then we started talking about the tribalism and the sort of the aggressive nature. That really came a bit later on. That really came after 83, 84, certainly post Rum Runner, I would say. Okay. That things got a bit more challenging and there was a bit more aggression on the dance floor, where there was what I would call
positive aggression, though. We have to frame
Yeah.
I
mean, but there was kind of or friendly aggression, shall we say? Yeah. And even sort of in the early days, at the late 70s, you had people like Bulldog who was challenging dancing against, but it was kind of a friendly dance off. It wasn't as heavy as he got later on, sort of in the, I'd say, the mid 80s certainly, and therefore where Birmingham got the reputation of saying these guys are a bit more edgier than everywhere else, where London were a bit more smoother. Manchester had their own little clique, Nottingham had their own little clique, or Derby or whatever. They had a different kind of a vibe, where Birmingham were like a tour de force. They came in there like sort of they came to battle, put it that way.
Yeah, good.
Where nobody came to Birmingham really to battle till later on to sort of, okay, well, we're going to give Birmingham some of, but yeah, they couldn't touch us.
So the one thing I'd like to add on
that is that I'll use your day scene now. Locarno, you had a Northern Soul scene, and then you had the jazz funk scene in the back room. Now, that fulcrum, that musical fulcrum, for my part, looking back, formed the basis of rave, dance, acid jazz, all those genres, because you had to have a beginning somewhere. And that scene at that time was the beginning of everything.
I also feel that you have to say, because I'm sure there will be people screaming out, that would have been mirrored up and down the country in their own respective.
Oh yeah,
of course. You had Paul Trouble in London, Norman, and all these guys. Paul Murphy. So obviously legendary Colin Curtis. So they were all doing things up and down the country.
Drop your mic a tiny bit for me, Bruce. Drop your mic a tiny bit for me. Otherwise it's perfect. We're getting still a lot of people. Probably you've gone too far now. No, you're cool.
Any good?
Yeah, we're cool. So
yeah, okay.
Dave, Dave Furs, my good friend who lives not far from me here now, he's from Stoke. He was saying it was all football based. I don't think it was.
No,
I
no,
don't
you're
think
talking about
not from Birmingham, not from the Birmingham aspect.
no, you see what
No.
people have got to realise is that the different generations had different attitudes in the way of interpreting the music and also interpreting how to go out. Now, later on, when you had like your coach ships going to your rock cities and your legends and all that, this is where we could talk a little bit more about the tribalism. But when we're talking about that early period, it was all about music, style, and for the guys, girls.
So Chris Lloyd also saying Birmingham definitely had their own style and were what's this saying, and were super aggressive roughnecks. Yeah. Okay, Chris. Trevor Fung is getting a mention from Justin. Victoria says it was always good natured. Duarte coming in and saying badass as well, and also Neil Rushton getting a shout out. With Neil's definitely someone that needs to be spoken to
definitely
at some point. So yeah, we're waxing lyrical here, getting very romantic about these times. I think so. I think we covered the birth of the dancing, the dance off, the music scene. So, Frenchie, are we getting way ahead of ourselves if we start talking about how you then started to become involved?
Well, basically, what happened, I started working at Summit Records October 1980.
Okay.
And what had happened at that time, when I started, there was Sean and Dave Till had a shop called DNS Co. And the all-day scene was just, it reached, it was finished in Birmingham.
Yeah, reached its pinnacle, hadn't it?
You might get to this point, but forgive me for asking, when did the Locarno turn to the Powerhouse? Right,
1980, I think it's 1981 or 82. See, I can give a little bit of history about that.
Okay, go on then.
So basically what happened, a promoter from Preston came down. I'd only not long started working at Summit. This was around 1981, 82, something like that. I can't remember exactly which year. And there was no all-day scene in Birmingham at all. They'd finished. And basically he came to me, he says, Tony, I'm looking for a club to start the all-dayers in Birmingham, and if you help me, I will look after you. At this time, I was called, my nickname then was Frenchie T. Now, during that, when he came to me, I says, okay, I'll help him out. But before I go there, let me go back a little bit. Let me just go back a little bit. My DJing journey started at a little political club on Bristol Road opposite the Dome called, was it the Labour Social Club? Something like that.
Labour Social Club, yes.
Yeah, they had a club called Stars. Myself and Paul Dixon, or now he's Shaquille Dixon, Mixed Wizard Dixon, we did our very first jazz funk gig on that then, and there was only about 15 people. And the record that always reminds me of that night was Hiroshima Warriors. That was a key, that reminded me of my little starting as a jazz funk DJ. But coming forward now to the all days in Birmingham. So we went to Maximilian's on Broad Street, and we went to see the owner. And one of my mates, Everton Webb, he was the resident DJ, so he helped us to get into the club. And we did three all days at Maximilian's, in which...
Tell me that again about Everton.
Yeah, oh, yeah. What was it? I haven't spoken to him for a little while, but Everton, No, Everton was the resident DJ at Maximilian's.
Wow. Is Maximilian's the one that went on to be Faces?
No, it's opposite Faces.
Faces was opposite, because remember,
it became Studebaker's after.
No,
sorry.
Faces became XL's.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. we're going way too far there. Carry on with your story. I'm sorry.
So we started the all day scenes in Maximilian's, and it started to grow a cult feeling. Now, this is where I would say the younger element, like your bulldogs, your stretches, your lizards, all that sort of generation started to come into play, because it was like, who's all these scruffy young lads? So even dress-wise, it was different. It was more edgy. It was more street. Then it moved from there to did one gig at Snobs. It went to Snobs first. The management didn't want it, so it moved to Romeo's and Juliet's, and then it changed to Steptoes.
No idea where that is.
Yeah.
No, right. You know,
it's the new Snobs, which was Pagoda Park. Yeah.
You know Pagoda Park.
Yeah.
Pagoda Park used to be called Romeo and Juliet, and it was owned by Mark and Keith.
Okay.
They then transformed it.
Well, it was. I think when you were there, French, I think it was called La Dolce Vita.
No, that was before.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, was that before you? Was it?
No. La Dolce Vita was way before Steptoes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It used to be La Dolce Vita. Yeah, then it became Romeo and Juliet. Then it became Steptoes, and then Pagoda Park.
Pagoda Park. So they did all days at Pagoda Park. They did not Pagoda Park, Romeo's and Juliet's. They did all days at Steptoes, and then the big one started in around 1981. So 82, I'd say 82. I was still working at something anyway. We used to do like the tickets, and I was kind of a bit of a information hub for people wanting to know what's going on, where's going on. And in a funny sort of way, I used to know what was going on because people would tell me. So it was a bit of an information source. And of course, I would see DJs who'd want to buy records. I'd see young people who'd want to buy records. I would see a young 16, 15-year-old Andy Ward sniffing around buying records. I'd see a Bruce Q, coming down. I used to recognize, it's so weird that when people used to buy records from me, it's going to sound kind of mad, I used to recognize them by their legs, how they walked down the stairs. I could tell you everybody.
You could tell how much money they had in their pockets.
Well, my job was to extract the money.
Yes, so and you did a very good job of that. Okay, so Bruce, what's your timeline around these years that he's talking about? Then 81, 82, 83.
Well, around that time, it was about 1977. I used to go to the Midlands Arts Centre. I used to do martial arts and all that kind of stuff there. And I'd bought myself from Lasky's on Corporation Street a pair of E70 Wharfdale speakers, which are legendary speakers if you're into funk and all that kind of stuff. So I'd got these speakers, and myself, my friend Lee, there's a few of us, Eric Williams, we were chatting about whether we should have our own parties and all that. So we spoke to one of the guys, I think his name was John Henry, at the Midlands Arts Centre. So I'm about 15, 16 years old. They were too shy and said, well, you go and talk to them because you're here all the time using the studios to paint and draw. So I spoke to him and I said, look, we'd like to run a Saturday night. And he said, well, what would you do? I said, well, we're just having a little, dance. We all like dancing, and we'll charge 50p, and you can sell the drinks and all. He said, yeah, that's fine. So we called the night Vibrations, which I still have the original poster for that I drew then.
Nice.
So we started this little night up, and all of a sudden, people from all over the place, and before you knew it, there was probably about 70, 80 people in there, jazz dancers, into funk and all that, and all of a sudden, they got to know me, I got to know them, and from there, I just started DJing. The next job after that, somebody said to me, well, we've got a club on the Moseley Road, the African Centre. Why don't you come and run a night there? So I started doing a Sunday night there with Lee. From there, we started doing little pubs and bars, and it kind of moved on. So I started DJing, and all of a sudden I was thrown into the DJ world, where people say, oh, come and play at a party, come and play here. I was doing boogies, etc., etc.
This is 78, 79, 80.
Yeah, it was about 78, 79,
wow.
Yeah. And it was there, then I kind of... discovered Frenchie. I'd seen Sean Williams DJing at a few places. Used to go to the Old Days, Romeo and Juliet, as he says. Bob Charles used to DJ there, and we used to live in there basically. As Frenchie said, we saw people like Light of the World there. Yeah, and I was doing I was doing stints, but I was more of a dancer at the time, to be honest with you, Andy. That was everybody knew me more as a dancer. But I was DJing on the side and doing a bit. As time moved on, I got to know Frenchie. Obviously, Frenchie took all my money from me.
Well, E-double-D's just come into the chat, and he said, yeah, Frenchie sold me Roadblock, but he didn't tell me it was Stock Aitken and Waterman. So he's cussing you, he's cussing you already.
Well,
Bruce,
you just remind me of something. I mean, I really first seen Bruce at Faces when Steve Dennis used to DJ, and I'll never forget the first time when George Michael, Wham and them lot used to because it was a Friday night. It was a pop night, but they played soul music because Steve Dennis used to play soul music, and that's where I remember seeing Bruce with Junior, Mason, his brother, or Moss. That's where I remember I first seen Bruce as a dancer in there.
Well, I'm going forward a few years, and we'll come back to your story. But for me, Faces is a pair of chinos, a blazer with the sailor badge, getting there really early to make sure I can get in, and then having to argue or be really polite to my friend.
Let me tell you something about Faces. When I first went there, I mean, we'd been going to Rome and Brummer and all that was going on, and Faces was this little club that had opened up in 1980 or something. And we'd walk past and we sort of thought, let's try this. So we went to walk in and they were going, sorry, lads, not tonight and all that. So I got chatting to the bouncer, and it just so happened that he knew some guys that I knew. And he went, go on then, because they used to do martial arts. So he let me in. And there was probably about 20 people in there. You know what I mean? It was kind of like mediocre-ish. There was really nothing really going. It was a kind of a chill-out bar. You know, you had waitress service and all that kind of stuff. And it was mainly at the time a lot of Iranians, because they had a lot of cash.
Right.
The Iranians were sort of around that time, they had a lot of money, and that they were the main guys in there, whether it was Liberties or Faces, they were the guys buying champagne and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I went in there, and I think he played High Tension, the DJ played High Tension, and I asked him for some records, and I think I'd asked him for Dancing in Outer Space, and he went, what's that? And I went, Candido Jingo, what's that? And I went, I need to bring you some records. So I said, I've got all these tunes. He goes, bring them in. So this was on the Friday. On the Saturday, I took a batch of records. I remember taking Dancing in Outer Space, Candido Jingo, Mass Production Shante, Bobby Thurston, Check Out the Groove, Brass Construction, Shake It. And this guy just played them all. And he was playing them. I was dancing. And all of a sudden, everybody was coming up to me and say, who taught you how to dance? And blah, blah, blah. So because I've become popular in there, I was the only guy dancing in there. All of a sudden, I had a bit of clout. And what did I do? Started bringing all my friends in there. And it started to escalate there. So the place became full of dancers all of a sudden. And then the DJ had left and Steve Dennis moved in. And Steve Dennis was a bit more jazz funk orientated. He got me to start up a sort of a dance troupe. I'm talking about dance troupes, actually. The Midlands Arts Centre. I don't know whether you know Trevor Hodge. I mean...
Yeah, I know Trevor.
Yeah. I mean, Birmingham dancers, they all know Trevor Hodge, another legend. But he moved. He and I used to have a dance troupe together with a girl called, I think her name was Debbie Hollis. And he moved to London and he went on to do Starlight Express and all that kind of stuff. So that was my dance troupe things. Spoke to Steve Dennis about that and he said, well, why don't you do a dance troupe here? So we started off a dance troupe at Faces. And then we used to have the jazz funk charts and all that. And that's really how Faces got a name or it got stamped with the jazz funk.
I didn't realise that, man.
That was alongside parallel with the other room, which used to be quite New Romantics and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to the story and then thinking about if you, at that time frame in the 80s, as it progressed a little bit, and the wine bar scene and the whole yuppie period was just about to kick in. You know, it's mental when you
they were all linked. I mean, people would go to Hawkins, then they would go to Rummer, they would go to Rummer, then slip between Faces and Liberties. If you're a bit more slicker, you had a few more quid in your pocket. Unlike me, you would go to Liberties more. But then we started going there more and more regularly, and TJ myself. That's how I met my present wife. That's where I met her at Liberties, because she was into the music and so was I, and we kind of
another mighty fine dancer. Talking of mighty fine dancers, we got Bulldog with us locked on.
So the legend.
Yeah, the legend.
How are you, Bulldog? I remember Bulldog. Let me tell you a story about Bulldog and the Rum Runner. We were kids. I think we were about 18 and 19. Bulldog probably better memory than myself. I was dancing and he's dancing. Now imagine I'm the only Asian guy. Bulldog's dancing and he's when we stopped, had a break or whatever, he looked at me and goes, yeah, you're a really good dancer, man. Who taught you how to dance? I said, the same guy who taught you. He burst out laughing And ever since then, Bulldog and I have been brothers.
Brilliant. EDD says, we didn't go to clubs, we went to houses. And that's quite right, actually.
Well, funny you should say about house parties. Well, house parties, because, I mean...
Or flat parties in Newtown and Newtown.
Well, what I would say is this, because my time was slightly different. What used to happen with myself and Shaquille, Paul Dixon, we used to do American parties for American soldiers.
Okay.
So we did quite a few parties. We played a few sessions for American soldiers because they was friendly with like an old partner of Paul's, I should say Shaquille, and they had parties there, so we always used to play. And that was brilliant. And also as well, what happened as well, I used to have parties as well. I'll never forget the one night I had a flashing hat with lights, strobe lights flashing, DJing in my mum's house. This was at my mum's house.
Yeah, with the little hole where you put the square battery in it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, what it did at that time, it cultivated a brotherhood amongst the Soul family, because the one thing that was relevant at that time, and I know it's the same thing with the dance side as well, but what happened, a family culture from the Lacana, from the Rumrunner, to those early old days before I really talk about the powerhouse, there was a culture, a family, and what was happening was that every Sunday, coach parties used to be organised, and at that stage, myself, Shaquille, Paul Dixon, we'd organise coaches to go all over the country. It didn't matter, even if there was it could have been in Shrewsbury, it could have been in Hereford, it could have been anywhere. As long as we had somewhere to go on a Sunday, that became a way of life. And it was quite interesting, where I'll never forget, but I'll come to that slightly a bit later, when we organised.
When did they start then? When did you start those parties?
That started around 82, 83.
Okay, because I would have been going to those. I would have been going to the ones that are around about 86, 87.
Well, that was when we were starting to get involved, doing the coach organising, and I mean my favourite memory of all the coaches. This was slightly later. Now, Shaquille had organised 5 coaches to go to Nottingham Rock City, but we had one coach that went to an all-nighter in Scotland.
I remember that. I remember the story.
And it was in a farm. It was in a farmyard. And it was a full coach. And I have to admit, everybody who attended that trip, even to this day, we have such fun memories. Some of the guys have left us now, which is a shame, but we had to get a taxi driver to take us to the venue because it was out in the country, it was out in the fields, we didn't know. So if you can imagine all these black guys coming off the coach into a Scottish farm, and they're looking at us, and the first thing that they did was bought everybody a drink. We was really made welcome.
The entertainment's here.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. I must admit, there's a certain arrogance about Birmingham dancers. I don't know if it's the same thing with the dance side of it, but wherever Birmingham dancers used to go, they had to go on the centre of the floor. There was only one city that had an argument about that. That was the Londoners. But that's another story. That's another story. So with the Birmingham, they had this siege mentality that as soon as they go into a venue, they go straight to the middle of the dance floor and impose their male mascot. And even the girls, they're right. We're Birmingham's here and we're going to take over. That was a mentality.
I remember that from my early memories of going to many of the legendary parties on those coach trips. So you would have still been, and I'm going to bring it back, but would have you still been organising them in 86, 87?
No, 86, 87, I came away. I got fed up. Well, I was more involved in pirate radio then.
Okay.
I think I'd lost interest with...
Okay, so let's stop that about 86, 87. Let's go back to 83, 84 then. So you're doing the Ordayers.
Yeah.
Bruce is already making a name for himself. He's already got his dance troupe. Him and Bulldog are now a force to be reckoned with. They're also doing sly little table dances for the Iranians. It sounds like he had that market cornered. So
not exclusively Iranians.
Oh, what other men did you dance for then, Bruce? I'm sorry.
I don't know. Well, I didn't know the nationality. I don't judge people by the colour of their skin, Andy.
I judge. The colour of their money.
Yeah, colour. That's I judge them by. That's the one.
One thing I can say about the All-Day scene at that time was that, as I said before, there was a brotherhood, there was a culture that was developing. And I would say from 82 to 86, I'd just say, this is where the travel culture really took off. The All-Day scene in the country, not just Birmingham, not just Manchester, not just Nottingham, the All-Day scene took off. Mm-hmm. The very first Powerhouse was 1982 when he went to the Powerhouse. I remember it clearly. Now, I was fortunate enough because working at Summit Records, we used to sell the tickets for Powerhouse, Rock City, and other events that used to go all over the country. So the very first Powerhouse All Day, the artist that was involved at that time was David Joseph. He just released his record, You Can't Hide Your Love. I was amazed by the vibe, the energy. That very first All Day, it was electric. I don't know why. It was a brand new club, you know.
Was there much downtime between the Locarno closing and the Powerhouse opening? Or was it instantaneous?
Yeah. No. This was where I mentioned about the promoter Kenny Khan coming from Preston, and there was a 2-year period.
Okay, I didn't hear you say that. Right,
yeah,
okay.
my mistake. There was a 2-year period between Locarno closing and when the Powerhouse opened. So it was probably 83, and my apologies.
And in fairness, there was a different vibe, wasn't there? Even within just those 2 years, even within those 24 months, there was a big, massive shift from the vibe that used to be the Powerhouse, Locarno, to the Powerhouse. There was a different vibe altogether.
But this is where the generations comes into play, because see now what was happening at that time.
Because that would have gone from my mum's generation then into sort of like the slightly older than me generation.
And don't forget, music had changed as well. Electro would come into the arena. Mm-hmm. 1 minute we were listening to Roy Ayers, a more soulful disco, jazz, funk, where also on the electronic-y vibe started coming in, and that shifted everything as well. And then sort of
when you say electro, are you talking Malcolm McLaren, or are you talking more sort of
are
you talking more sort of like stuff. New Romantic?
No, more sort of the Tyrone Bronsons and sort of all that kind of American electronic-y stuff, not the electro as in sort of African Bambata and all that kind of stuff.
Right, okay.
Well,
I mean, even though that was there, but it kind of made its way more, I think probably about 84, 85, it became harder hitting here.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you a story about that. Because around, the electro scene was very, very dominant. Well, it was a mixture of the electro and the soul scene. And this is where the culture of breakdancers came into play. Now, what happened was that you had from Nottingham, Rock City, Broken Glass, the B-Boys, Wolverhampton, all this sort of... it was a different energy. So you had 2 scenes. You had 3 scenes. You had the B-Boys scene, you had the jazz funk scene, and you had the jazz scene. So you had different elements. And for a period of, say, like 2 years... It was very dominant. I'll never forget. There's a couple of stories I could share where I was fortunate enough. This was 1984 now, moving slightly forward.
Clive Smith saying 84, 85 shift work.
Clive, who shift work? What happened? Paul Oakenfold used to look after the London Rockers. I'd managed to...
Paul Oakenfold?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd I managed to sort out. I had Central TV came to see me at Summit Records. Peter Mina.
Okay.
And he says, you know, we've heard so much about this all-dayer scene in Birmingham and the Midlands. So we'd like to do a TV program on it. So at the time, the Hummingbird was open. And I spoke to Lloyd Blake at the Hummingbird and said to him, Lloyd, I'd like to, myself, I did it with myself, Elliot Brown, who used to be with Medium Wave, and Tony Bing. And I went to Lloyd and I said, Lloyd, can we do an all day at the Hummingbird? Because I've got TV interested. And again, this is where I say the family factor came into play, where that all day, even though we was organising it, it felt like the Birmingham jazz funk scene organised it.
Right. So,
now,
I'm gonna don't put a timestamp on that. Don't forget, okay? So
Yeah.
you're talking about the Hummingbird. What I wanted to ask you about was roll back a little bit. I used to go roller skating when it was the Top Rank.
Yeah.
So was there anything? Who can you remember who would have been DJing in those times in sort of like the early 80s?
At the Top Rank, I can't remember because like it would have been. I would have to ask certain people.
Yeah, I mean, there was mainly a house DJ and they'd have a band on. That would sort of, I mean, I'm talking about 80, 88 or something like that.
Much earlier than that. I would have been 13.
Sorry,
14.
I'm talking 78, not 88. Sorry,
Okay.
about 78 or something like that.
It would have been around 80, 81.
So was the Top Rank
81.
was the Top Rank part of the cool clique of Birmingham, or not necessarily? No, not really.
No, it wasn't.
Well, I will say, you know what? But it did have a lot of dancers was frequent there. I mean, for example, you had Tony Evans, who went on to he was competing against what's his name? Oh gosh, Grant Santino, who became the world. I think he was the world disco champion. But people like Tony Evans were competing against him.
Okay.
I
remember feeling quite cool at the Top Rank. People I used to go with from Casavaya, they were quite. They were a few years older than me. They were proper wicked.
Well, they'd all go to the
dancers.
small room. There was the big room, the main room, where you'd have a sort of in-house DJ playing sort of all disco stuff. Then you had a band who would do cover versions of things like Taste of Honey, High Tension, Brass Construction Movement.
I remember the music always being quite cool, especially for the roller discos on the. I think it was on the Sunday.
So yeah.
But it didn't have a bearing on
it didn't have a cool image as such, because
it didn't have a bearing.
Okay, so let's get back to your story then. Thank you for clearing that up for me. So the Hummingbird.
So when the Hummingbird opened, Lloyd came to me. So that's it. Lloyd came to me at Summit Records, and then when I was approached by Peter, who used to be one of the producers of Here and Now, we went to then. I approached Lloyd.
Okay.
So I got in touch with Erskine T, who was manager of Loose Ends. I got in touch with Paul Oakenfold. So what I did, I arranged the best breakdancers in the country. So
you organised all the Wolverhampton boys to come over as well?
No. Well, hear me out. So
sorry.
I got. So what I did, I actually formed the best breakdancers in Birmingham, and I called them Supreme Rockers. I actually formed them.
Okay.
So I got the best dancers from different groups and formed one group to call them the Supreme Rockers to take on the London Rockers, the London All Stars, to take on because people like, if I remember right, people like Richie Rich was the DJ for them. So you had Paul Oakenfold, who was the manager of the London All Stars. So I approached him. So we had them. We had Broken Glass, which of course had Goldie. Then the Rock City crew, of course, which Jonathan was looking after, and Broken Glass from Manchester. There was a Sheffield crew, but I can't remember their name now. So I organised that tournament for the benefit of the TV. Then on top of that, I asked Erskine T if we could have Loose Ends. And I won't say, Carl, please forgive me. I'm not going to tell you how much Erskine charges, but he looked after us. So, you know, Steve Dennis was used as a compare for the event. And I must admit, we had a jazz room with Paul Murphy. I had Onward International. And the host of DJs, I can't remember now. But
was Buzz playing on that one, French?
Funny enough, I've got it on. It's on video. It's actually on video. That all day. It's actually. I've got to find it.
Yeah, I think I've seen. Video. I think I might have seen.
When I was a young boy, 25 years old, behind the counter.
Yeah,
you look the same.
Yeah. So Clive's coming in and saying he's mentioning some names: Constructive Trio, Main Attraction, of course, Crush Pack, IMD, and Playboy. All of these names.
Well, funny enough, in that video where I was being interviewed in the shop, there was a very young George Powell who was one of the customers in the shop. It's only a quick glance, but it was George was one of the customers. He was there at that time. The event really went well, and as I says, what Clive was saying, that's the Birmingham element, but that was slightly later. That wasn't then. That was slightly later.
Let me interject then, because we're an hour into this and we haven't scratched the surface at all. Just between you guys, we're not going to be able to cover as much as I expected, but we're under no time constraints. We're going to carry on for as long as necessary. So let me just ask a question that I want to ask, and you can piece this broken memory of mine. Was there an underaged powerhouse all day? Because I'm sure I used to go to them.
Yeah, there was.
Because that's where I find it really difficult to differentiate between when I was going to those kiddie discos powerhouses and then I was there at the proper powerhouse. Tell me about that.
What used to make me smile, and I didn't know this till many years later, when some of the guys would say that they'd put shoe polish on their top lips to get into the venue, because the doorman, especially Randy, I don't know if you remember Randy.
I've spoken to you with Randy many times. He was my nemesis. Jeez.
And what I couldn't believe that people was wearing shoe and boot polish to put on as a mustache to
Frenchie, I told you that in confidence.
So tell me,
announcing it to the world.
Tell me about the underage or dayers. Then tell me about that.
To be totally honest, I didn't have much in part in that. So I don't really know. It used to happen in Xanadu, where the.
I was in the main. I used to be in the main room as
well. In the main room on a Saturday afternoon.
I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's been a Saturday afternoon.
Do you know much about that then, Bruce? Or
yeah, I've still got the membership somewhere.
Wow.
But he only ran sort of for about 4 or 5 months, if that. To be honest with you, if I remember correctly, it was a kind of a very short thing. Every Saturday they would run. I think it was up until about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
So what year would that have been? Gosh,
that was what, 79, 80, something like that. I think that was at the Locarno.
No. I was sure I went to something at the Powerhouse, so I must have been like 12 or 13 when I would have been going.
Yeah, the Powerhouse.
Maybe my memory
82, 83, that would have been in my timeline. But
maybe
it can't have been.
I thought it was a bit earlier than that, to be honest with you. But
you also have to remember that during the time of the old days, you still had a club scene, and Rum Runner was quite dominant for a period of time in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of it went older when it went into Liberties and Bruce doing things like the Kitten Club. It started to change. But then again, the generations.
Well, the reason why we did the Kitten Club really was because there was nowhere for us to go. That was the whole reason why I started the Kitten Club off, because since post the Rum Runner, all our soul scene, as we knew from Chaplin's, that lineage had kind of dissipated. So when we started doing the Kitten Club, it was about 86, was it, French? I don't know, you probably remember better than I. It was
about 87, 86, 87.
Yeah, and so the club scene had kind of died totally, and all of a sudden, everybody gravitated there to, on a Saturday night. It used to be packed.
Well, I mean, I'm going to share something where like the musical diversity changing, the introduction of house. Now, I think I'm trying to remember. This was about 84, Harlequin 4, yeah, 84, and the Washington, the DJ International stuff, the track stuff, because I worked in the record shop, I would see all these changes.
Mm-hmm.
I would see, so even though I had an input in regards to doing your days and all that, I also had like an understanding, an input in as far as records was concerned, where the house really came into play. And I think we've then, okay, it's slightly moving forward where you had like your Neil Rushtons when it came to network and all that sort of, and coming into say like Andy's period as well, where like your new groove, your Strictly Rhythm, but that's further down the line.
Yeah, that's way down the line. We've still got so much. We still got so much juice to extract from these years here for right now.
So it's just trying to
piece it all together. So yeah, so the powerhouse then, the birth of the powerhouse all days that became. I mean, I asked the poll earlier on, which is your favourite era, and it seems that the people have been watching are probably all going to be answering about the 80s, because we do reminisce with the nostalgia is so strong, because they were such formative years for many of us on that scene, whether you were 15, 16, 17 in the mid 80s or the mid 70s or whatever. It seems like we all share the same experiences, the same passion, and the same. You just look back on it, and there's just so many tales and so many stories. But knowing how influential Birmingham was in so many different areas with so many different people, and it gave birth to so many different. That's what I'd like to try and cover down the
one thing I would say, and I'm going to talk about Frenchie on this little moment, a pivotal moment at the powerhouse for me, Frenchie, was when there was a coach trip to Manchester, Legends, where Greg Wilton used to play every Wednesday night. And I was supposed to go that night, but I couldn't go because on a Wednesday, we'd used to have all the new records at Summit Records. So I'd do the late shift on the Wednesday night, sorting out the records, getting it ready for the following day. And in the morning, the Thursday morning, I seen guys straggling back for like Shaquille, quite a few, I said, hang on, you're supposed to be home, blood on shirts and all this. I don't know what the hell's happened. So the coach was trashed in Manchester, and I'll never forget this, so I thought, right, I'm going to make a speech about Birmingham. And, I made a little speech, and I played Tyrone Brunson, the Smurf, and the house just uproared. I said, this is just this is a bottle moment for myself. The house just
this is on the Sunday at the Powerhouse.
On the Sunday, this is on the Sunday at the Powerhouse. That Sunday, it just happened to be the Birmingham all day at that Sunday, because Birmingham and Nottingham would alternate. And I said, I nearly said the wrong word.
You can swear if you want to. Feel free.
I said, geez, I feel as though I've come of age. That's how I felt. I felt as though I've come of age. This was my moment. And that really gave me quite a bit of a bottle moment, a special moment as far as Frenchie was concerned on the all-day scene. And I have to give props to DJs like Jonathan, to Sean Williams, to Colin Curtis, to all the DJs, Shaquille.
Well, when I was going to the Powerhouse, I'm not ashamed to say I used to go with my friends Gary, Lee, Richard, and it was very much focused on the music. but
Yeah.
he was also very much focused on the ladies as well. So
Oh, of
I
course.
think it
That
was
was
more
legendary.
heavily. I can just remember doing laps around the place, just like looking
I
for.
thought you were going to say, I remember doing lap dancing then, Andy.
No. I'm not in your crew. Doing like laps, looking for waifs and strays. But the one DJ I always remember, and in hindsight, you get to hear all these names, of course. And I know Paul used to come and play there a lot. I know Jonathan was there yourself. One DJ who always stuck in my mind was Simon Baseline Smith. And I'm not sure.
Simon was from Derby. To be fair, Simon.
I think
was
he had a hat on with his name,
yeah, wood
and
hat,
really made him stand out, and his music really resonated with me. So he's really the only DJ I remember from back then. So you're telling me all these guys were sort of like the resident DJs.
Well, I will give my personal opinion on people who's always stuck in my mind when it came to the Paris all day. I would have to say Colin Curtis, definitely. He resonated for me. I would have to say Sean Williams as well. He also resonated at that time. But I'd also have to say Paul Anderson. Mm-hmm. Paul Anderson brought a totally different energy. He totally different vibe to the whole thing. And the one person who broke the rules, I'll say he broke the rules literally, but he went down the storm, was Tim Westwood. He played the first reggae record, which was not allowed, but he played the first reggae record, and I thought there was an earthquake in the house.
Really?
You know, I seen guys running from balconies, from all over the place, and I thought, flipping hell. And in a funny sort of way, it's going to sound bad how I say this, but for me, it started to change the order. It started to become something that I didn't really enjoy.
Okay.
Because from a purist point, I didn't want to be part of that. And I suppose when that started to happen, of course, the house side was also kicking in as well, when you had Graham Park coming down and all that sort of stuff. And also the introduction of artists as well, where like at Rock City, you had the Chicago lot and all this. So you could see that there was game changing in the way of, say, the direction of the music.
So on a Friday and a Saturday at the Powerhouse, away from the Ordayers, it was just your normal Saturday night. I mean, you say, coincidentally, your Ritzy club, because it went on to be the Ritzy, but it was your Sharon and Tracy club on a Friday and a Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing Divine perform, Stephen Tintin Duffy. Would that have been just on a Friday and a Saturday, or was that at an Ordayer?
Well, funny enough, even though it's not relevant to our music, Tintin was a Birmingham record. I don't know why.
So that would have been at the
nightclub, every bar, every Tintin. What was it called? Tintin.
Stephen Tintin Duffy.
Yeah, no, his record. What was it called?
Kiss Me, Touch Me, Kiss Me.
It was a massive
Kiss
Birmingham
Me, Kiss
record.
Me, wasn't it? Kiss Me.
I can't remember, but it was a massive Birmingham club
Kiss
record.
Me with Your
at the
Mouth.
time.
But I remember seeing him there, and Divine as well, and a few other things. So that's where it all blurs into one with me. What was I going to it? Was it an all-dayer? Was it a Friday or a Saturday?
No, that would have nothing to do with the all-day scene. Nothing at all, because it's totally different. It was more Sharon. I call it Sharon and Tracy.
Yeah, it was a different scene altogether.
Yeah, I've got there are pictures of me, because you wouldn't have been in an all-dayer with a suit jacket on and a shirt and tie, would you?
No,
I've got photos of myself in the Powerhouse, and that must have been like on a Saturday night kind of.
Yeah, but remember, you was young, so you was trying to look older.
Yeah.
with the.
And the provisional driving license with the screw. So that would have been 87 when I got my provisional license, because you had to be 18 to get in, didn't you? But I remember going when I was 16. So it's crazy.
If I was to umbrella my feelings about the all-day scenes, and I'm saying generally from the Locarno era to the Maximilians, that era, to the Powerhouse era, that umbrella, I would say that it made a massive club influence UK wise, because it was no longer a scene that was just for Birmingham, it was just for Nottingham, it was just for Manchester. It hit nationally.
And not only that, it became super club. I mean, that was really the forerunner of what was it called?
The Weekenders.
What was that big club on Bristol Road at the end?
Oh, the Dome.
The Dome. Yeah, that was really the forerunner, and the whole club culture had changed from sort of being a small club of 150, 200 people that was running the soul scene before, like the Rummer and Chaplains. It become to, like you say, a different level. We had 2,000 people plus.
The blueprint of the Weekenders, as far as I was concerned, and people would probably disagree with me or whatever, but the blueprint of the Weekenders came from the old days, because you had a mixture of music, which up until this present day, if you think about it, when you go to your Southports, you go to Croatia's and all that, yes, it incorporates dance, yes, it incorporates soul, yes, it incorporates the hip hop, it incorporates all the music elements, but the blueprint for the Weekenders, whether it be Southport or whatever, came from the old days massively.
I agree, but it was, and I will repeat again, I think it was just it was mirrored up and down the country. I think that was just a natural progression, and when you think the music press would have had a lot to do with that, and the music distribution as well would have also had a great deal to do with that. We mentioned about Graham earlier, just with his there were many others like him going to the States and bringing back the music.
I'll share a story which I forgot. You just reminded me. Now, I used to write letters when I was doing all the traveling to all these different events, Shrewsbury, Derby, Nottingham, wherever. I used to write letters to Blues and Soul because, like an idiot at that time, I was so passionate about Birmingham. I wanted to promote Birmingham because I felt as though we didn't have a voice. So every week I would send a letter everywhere where I played or was involved, where I did a coaching. I'd send a letter to Blues and Soul saying, look at this. And we became good friends with the Echo's Lindsay Wesker. But I'll come back to Lindsay in a bit. And what happened, I send all these letters. Why don't you do this? This is what happened, did it? And out of the blue, I had a letter from Blues and Soul. And what they did, they said to me, well, I've got some good news to share with you. We'd like to ask you to be the contributor for the Midlands for Blues and Soul. And I was a bit surprised by that because I didn't expect it. And I did that for a few years. I couldn't really keep it up, but I did it. And, it was quite interesting, then acknowledging that, my little letters of complaints, coming back.
Coming back to you. So, Bruce, let's hear let's hear a little bit from you, Bruce. We've heard from Frenchie because it totally enthralling stuff. But throughout Frenchie's tales, I'm sure there's been some moments that you thought you'd like to share, or you can intertwine with all of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to when Frenchie said that he remembers me from Faces, but sorry, French, I don't remember you from Faces.
No, I was a nobody. Nobody.
You were always somebody to me, French, and you still are.
I was nobody. I was just one with the bar. That's all I was.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, and then I met Frenchie, obviously, at Summits, excuse me, on Temple Street, wasn't it, French?
Yeah.
And I'd met Frenchie, and we sort of got on with about music. I started talking about the Kitten Club and clubs I was running, etc. And I just went on from doing the Kitten Club because there was a bit of a vacuum. And I coming back to what you were saying about the Ordeas and Birmingham, I think one of the reasons why Birmingham was so successful in developing that culture, because we had a juxtaposition with other types of music, like the Duran Durans, like the Steel Pulse and all that. But then we had to respond. There was a group of people that needed to respond against that because that wasn't necessarily the music that they were into. And I think, therefore, jazz funk took a stronger hold and then eventually becoming house music like the Ryans took on doing Money Pennies, etc. And I do personally think that that was the springboard. I think it was the juxtaposition or a kind of a vacuum that was left behind from those kind of people, where Birmingham was quite, he had the rock history and all the rest of it. But so there was a kind of how can I put it, a germination of thinking, right, we need to do something for ourselves. Certainly from my point of view, watching clubs in the Kintney Club, that was really why we started off, because there wasn't anything in that went on to...
Your vision was very focused. You had a very predetermined plan. We can look back on these things in hindsight and romanticize about them. But was there such... such a united effort amongst others, or did it just fall into people's laps?
No, I think there was. I mean, certainly with people like Sean Williams, who I would probably credit as the main springboard of the Birmingham soul scene. He was definitely a segue into that. The Rum Runner, even though it only had a sort of 3 or 4 year life. I can speak to many DJs. We've got EDD, Frenchie, and all that. We'll all admit that, when we used to go to the Rum Runner, the culture potting that was created there sort of made us all. I mean, even when I moved on years later to the Liquid Fusion and all that, it was really a kind of reinvention of what was going on at the Rum Runner. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody was trying to re-emulate that on some level, if they knew what the Rum Runner scene was about the dancing and all the rest of it. Not necessarily the Durrani scene, probably DJ Dick and all that. They reinvented, obviously, Money Pennies and what they were doing from their scene, but certainly from the jazz funk scene, there were so many little clubs that popped up that was trying to reinvent the Rum Runner to some form or some shape, because it was no longer there. Mm-hmm. And because all of us kind of came from that temple of the Rum Runner, certainly to agree, we'd matured, gone to Rum Runner and thought, okay, this is what it should be about. And I think the influence, the cosmopolitan influence of sort of having a kind of a feeling a bit New Yorkish, a lot of Europeans there, and everybody seemed to be inspired. There was a lot of people doing a lot of things. There was fashion designers, there was artists, there was actors, directors.
I never got that. I personally never felt that. I was many years later, not many years later, but enough years later to not really feel that I was part of that. I didn't have that inside knowledge of what you say. It makes it sound very kind of avant-garde. Avant-garde's not the right word.
Yeah, I think it was avant-garde. It was certainly, there was kind of an underground military that was doing. I mean, when you remember people like Errol T, who was a networker.
God, yeah.
He was networking from the behind scenes. You cannot
God rest
really
his
get.
Soul. Yeah.
Sorry?
God rest his soul.
Yeah, all these people, they were all networking on some level. And Sean Williams, people like Sean Williams, they were kind of the vanguard of the Birmingham movement, where they kind of thought, okay, and everybody was kind of thinking, Sean was, treated as a god in Birmingham. And that's why you have the Rumner reunions trying to still happen, because so many people remember it, all the Rick and Ties, the Baptists, Ricos, the Smilers, rest in peace. All these people, they were all doing
Let me ask you a question. Was Smiler the really muscly guy, the dancer?
No.
Who was Bald
Rico? You're on about Rico.
Bald Dog used to dance with a guy who was like huge, a powerhouse.
That was Rico.
That was Rico.
It was like the Terminator.
Always very stern faced, but a bad dancer.
You saying about Rico? It was thanks to Rico, right? And there are certain people who are pivotal in, sort of, for example, my history of DJing. Rico came to the Kitten Club in 86, 87, and he was one of the first people that turned up. Right, I'd seen him on Corporation Street. I said, I'm starting this new night. And if you know Liberties and the kind of clientele they had and all that kind of stuff, it speaks for itself. Rico turned up and he was on the dance floor and he said, I'm in heaven. This is the best thing since the Rum Runner, hence why I make that statement. Then he told Bulldog, he he basically started network, and everybody started networking externally to other cities and other towns. And that's why the Kitten Club became so successful. And I would always be grateful for Rico for doing that.
But there's something that you're forgetting about Rico, which is very, very underplayed. Rico was very prominent with the Powerhouse, because what Rico used to
absolutely.
do,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, what Rico used to do, he was the leaflet boy. He was the voice of the promoter. in regards to the promotion of Powerhouse. So Rico's role in the Powerhouse All Days was, at that early period, was very, very
very
pivotal.
vital, and that is why I say it was quite military. Like Andy, you just asked, you know, what I mean, it looked like it was by design rather than by fault. It was certainly trying to be by design because there were people networking behind the scenes. There was a group of people who were always networking, even right down to modern times, like I say, Smiler and Sam Birdie, and there was a handful of people at Liquid Fusion who really were the driving force because they were so passionate about it, and you could not help but get pulled into their passion and their love for it.
Definitely.
You know,
You see years down the line, seeing those guys being at Southport, or even, you know, years later coming to the choice boat parties and having a lot of the crew, or, you know, Fernando on the floor, or Bulldog's sister there
absolutely.
as well. You know, it's all these like you
all
say,
these
the
people were
family.
behind the scenes. They were working hard because they were so passionate about what they were doing. They wanted it to work. And that has carried on, I would say, certainly through the Rummer and Lineage, right through to Liquid Fusion, and now to Brook Up and clubs like that.
So let's take this up. Let me just interrupt you there. Let's take this up as far as the beginning of sort of the rave scene in Birmingham, okay?
Well,
and then we'll have to do another conversation after that, because there's still so much more. Bruce, you have a huge input after that as well. But so we want to draw the rave as the cut off of this point. We have no.
Well, I'd like to raise something that's very important now. When the all day scene was cutting off, I went into pirate radio. I was involved in pirate radio. Now, the whole key with that was that for me, it was like the next gen. It was like there was no music played on the radio as far as I was concerned. When I first started working with PCRL, it was a reggae station with traces of soul. I was very rebellious. I suppose that's my fault. I'm a bit too rebellious for my own good at times. And there used to be some classic meetings. Everybody would wait for me and Cecil because they knew there was going to be an argument in the meeting with me and him. I was always fighting for soul, and he was always fighting for reggae. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to come away.
But it was a pirate radio station. You didn't actually have a license that you had to abide by. So why was the argument?
No, the argument was that PCRL was a reggae station. I wanted more soul on the reggae station. Of course, when Cecil made me laugh, always made me laugh. You've got Radio 1, you've got this, you've got that. You don't need a station for soul. So I came away and I broke away, and with Don Christie, Tex Flint, Ricky Bailey from Delegation, Uncle Sam, Tony Owens, we formed Second City. So the whole key with that was to form a soul and dance station with trickles of reggae. That was it. And then what happened, that went on for a little while, but you know, and I have to really thank Tony Monson at Solar Radio for this, because I was using his engineer to form that. So that, as far as say like music expression in Birmingham was concerned, it was the basis of say like a soul and a dance station in Birmingham that started. And then when I formed in 1988 Fresh, which I used Gordon's engineer from Kiss FM, you know, that was Birmingham's first proper soul and dance station in 1988. And you're talking about dance music. We was fortunate, this was courtesy of Neil Rushton's network, because Paul Dixon and at the time my brother-in-law Scooby Swift, they was involved with Network Records. So Jeff Young would play a version of Inner City's Good Life, but we played the tougher version. I can't remember if it was a Steve Silk Hurley. And we was just using that as our test transmission. Right. So for the first 2 weeks, we was using it as our test transmission. While Jeff Young was playing the Mike Hickman Wilton version, we was playing the Steve Silk Hurley version on the station and as test transmission. And I had such a vibe playing soul, dance, jazz, all this. For me, it took me on a different journey. as far as like music. And then this is where Bruce would go into Coast to Coast. This is where Jim, God bless his soul, Jim and Mike at the Depot, for Second City and for Fresh, we use their Mega Active as a mailing address. And I'll be forever grateful for Jim for allowing us to use their shop as a mailing, because pirate radio was illegal. Okay. So they could have got in trouble just as much, but you know, they was, God bless them. So with the chuff party.
So you just said, well, you said Jim, God rest his soul.
Jim Riley. No, Jim Ryan, Jim Shaft Ryan.
Okay. Oh, I thought I was going to say who's passed
No,
away.
No. I'm just thanking him for Jim and Mike for giving us the opportunity to use the shop as a mailing address.
Right.
So, but that's another story. That's another story in itself.
Well, no, what I was saying was I didn't want you to think I was cutting you off, but I was just saying because I think we'll get up to that point of the rave scene. And you talk about Mega Active, it became a huge hub as ticket agents. So I spoke to Jim and Lee Fisher, as I said before, about their own parts of this story. Because as you know, people who do documentaries and they try and capture all these things. You imagine the wealth of the depth of stories and how it all branches off to different tales that everyone can tell. It's mind-blowing, isn't it, really?
Definitely. The network of the mindset and all, like I say, all the stories that everybody's got from Birmingham, certainly. I mean, as Frenchie was just talking, I was just going through all the things, and he's saying things that I've forgotten about myself. Mm-hmm.
Well, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, the whole because we're so busy moving on, we kind of think, and we were talking about earlier on. We were talking earlier on about why those times were special. They were special because they really were special. Yeah. And I don't think it's just because I've spoken to certain people and people say, "Do you think we're kind of romanticising about those times because we were younger then and all the rest of it?" I used to think that, but I kind of disagree now. Where I think we romanticize about, say, the past only because they were great times. Because you have young people now trying to emulate. I mean, I've got nieces who are 11 and 15, and they did. Sorry to digress a bit. They were going through my music, and they were doing themselves some tapes. What did they pick? They didn't pick anything new. They were going for Tina Marie, Roy Ayers, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Lonnie Liston Smith. These are 12-year-old and 15-year-old kids. Brilliant. I've not forced them into it, and they're just saying, I love her voice, and they're listening to Tina Marie thinking, how come they can't sing like this and they don't do music like this anymore? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same why we harp on the Renaissance, sorry to have an arty plug, the Renaissance and those artists, because there was something special there. I think we hit a moment where politically, socially, things just kind of like came together. There was a melting pot that just worked.
I think that's something that you cannot capture because there are so many aspects. As you say about politically as well, and everything.
Yeah, there was so much going on with the.
Well, let me say something on that. And this is the kind of like bridge then and now. The one thing, that period of the old days of the Pirate, of yourself with the Kitten Club, with Liquid Fusion and everything, with the rave scene, what it did, it brought a passion into our club life, our music life, our expression, our dress. It just brought everything. And if I was to use the old days scene as a part of it, the Powerhouse, to today, why the Powerhouse reunion party? Now, I was shocked in the response to how people responded to that because, to be totally honest with you, that all-dayer, that Powerhouse reunion 2019 was born on the night of the Rum Runner reunion party.
Okay.
And with that, I thought, let's try something. So when it actually started, the whole ethos about the Powerhouse reunion party in 2019, people were saying, because I was doing a few promotions, and they say, nah, Powerhouse reunion, Powerhouse, that's what we want. And it didn't make any sense to me how, it was just another night because we had the Rock City reunion that was successful. And like with the Powerhouse, there's so many stories I could say about that. But what I will say today was that I was shocked in the response, the vibe, the appreciation, and how people embrace it. I was absolutely shocked.
Well, when if you've just been, anyone that would have been sat listening to the tales we've been telling about how pivotal it was for so many people in and around the second city, it's no surprise that everyone was just welcomed it with so much energy.
I couldn't see it. I really couldn't see it, because as far as I was concerned, this is just me personally, it was just another stepping stone musically. So for me, it didn't have no relevance. And what was kind of interesting for me, on the actual night, I was speaking to Jacqueline, and he says, Frenchie, this is Birmingham's own. What's the club in
Studio 54?
That's it. This is Birmingham's Studio 54, and I didn't see it like that. I didn't see it like that.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's just as important, just as influential, and it might not be up there in shiny flashing lights, because we didn't, although there were a fair few celebrities that had passed through those doors, it just doesn't get revered like other spots. But to anybody that was there, it was just incredible. So you have got another one coming up on the 18th of December that I will give a good plug to towards the end. But I just want to start, because I could quite easily sit here for hours and hours, but I know we can't expect people to sit listening to us for hours and hours. That's unfair. We'll do it again, because there's so much more that we need to cover. But I want to again come back to Bruce, and say, with regards to the because you had a slightly different outlook on everything that was going on. You weren't as immersed in the music scene. You had a life running alongside your dancing and going out and partying and such with your with the work that you do, the very talented creative work that you do. Anybody that doesn't know that, expand on that, the things that you've done down the years.
Well, as soon as I left school, my father was an artist. And an art lecturer. So from the age of 3 and 4, I was painting and drawing, won various competitions nationally and whatnot. When I left school, I started painting for theatres and all that. I used to do all the backdrops and whatnot. Used to do a lot of restoration work for private clients, etc., private paintings for people. So this was like in my early teens, alongside the club, and that's how I used to make the money to buy the records.
As well as getting punched in the stomach.
Well, yeah, the punching days were over, I think. So probably drinking punch and not getting punched anymore. And really fast forwarding, it was really when I met TJ, my now wife. She we got chatting, and she used to have a modelling agency and all that kind of stuff, and that's the world that she'd come from. And about 88, it was around the same time as the Kitten Club. And that's another reason why the Kitten Club was so successful, because she would bring all her girlfriends, and they were all models. So they used to also run a model bar in Liberties, if you remember. Well, these were all her friends, so there were all these attractive women there, dancers, attractive women.
That's why I always wanted to get into Liberties. Right, okay.
And that was it was the perfect storm. It was a great cocktail, great music, great dancers. You know what I mean? And beautiful women. So from there, it kind of moved on. So I was kind of in between, bouncing between two dance floors. I was kind of on one side I was on the street, but I had a professional life as well. And then we started off an interior design company, Tony J Interiors. Well, at the time it was called The Studio, which used to be in Harborne. I think you used to come there as well, didn't you, Andy?
Yeah.
And then it became Tony J Interiors, and we went on to do hotels, clubs, super yachts, etc., etc. So that's really my other side. I'm really a professional artist outside being a DJ. And truthfully, with Frenchie and I've always said this. I've said this to Frenchie. I don't actually class myself as a DJ because I am not a professional person who does it professionally, respectfully like yourself. or say like Norman J, where they do it. That's they do it professionally. They set up gigs and all. I'm somebody who loves music, and my philosophy really is a very family function. It's like if I've got to play somewhere for free and people want to party, I'll play there for free.
Yeah.
And it's really about getting people to feel. My philosophy is really like this. I love music. Do you love it as well? If you love it, please come and join me. It's as simple as that.
That's how it started for all of us, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and that's my, they say great is he who retains his child's heart. So my mentality is still there. And in fairness, I'm not really a big fan of playing to big, massive crowds, only because I think it dilutes the personality. Other than your place, to be honest with you, a vocal booth, you can see there's a soulful vibe there. I mean, it really is. When people come together, you can see they're all in it. They're there for the music. There's no kind of like, why are we here? Should we be here? Everybody who comes to vocal booth, they are there for the music. It's a destination venue for people who are, clued up with it. And a lot of them understand jazz funk. They understand their soul, and they've moved to house and all that. Where a lot of the clubs in Birmingham now, unfortunately, I'd say over the past 2-3 decades, what I've observed as a business person and a music lover is you either have somebody who has a club, and I know I'm going a little wayward and a bit deep, there is somebody who has a club and they've got money to run a club, but they don't understand music and the culture. And when you speak to them, what's the sound system like, is usually one of my first questions. They go, oh, it's really loud. And that's, what I mean? You love it. It's really loud. That's the mindset. I need a good sound system, I need a dance floor, and I need clean toilets.
Right,
that's
listen, I'm going to stop you there, because before we start talking about all the things that are wrong about today's music scene, let's end off reminding ourselves what was so incredible about the old music scene, shall we?
I really think what it was bringing people. It was the family function. I think that's what it was. It was bringing people together. And like I said, about the politics of the time, what was happening, certainly in the UK and in Birmingham, what was happening, I think it forced people together. As we know that, in all sorts of troubled times, people come together. I think sadly, we're in that place. Well, sadly, but optimistically, we're in that place now with what's going on. I certainly think with people, once you've been oppressed so long and you've been pushed down, all you can do is spring forth stronger. As well, they say, the tighter you coil a spring, the further it springs back. And I think we're like that with the club culture. And that's why we're kind of, we're seeing all this re-emergence of the disco scene and old jazz funk. People like Incognito, Giles Peterson, who had moved through drum and bass, etc. He's now reverting back to doing jazz funk albums, like the Strata album. There's Far Out Records. They're kind of like now bringing out old jazz funk classics like Freeze. And there's a reason for that, because I think the climate is right for it, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, we're venturing way off into a whole different topic. What I've just, as I was sitting listening to you, it occurred to me that I think it would be great to do this again with a larger panel as well. Maybe another 2 guys who, between the 4 of you could all bounce around, sharing the memories and bouncing backwards and forwards on a lot of the topics, because there is still so much that we didn't really cover, so many pieces of the jigsaw still to be put in place. And I know, Frenchie, you want to sit here talking all night long, but I'm gonna
No, I finished.
Yeah.
I finished.
Really?
No, you haven't. There's
Frenchie,
no way
you
you
and me then.
finished. But yeah, we're going to do this. I again, I'm conscious of, and I can talk. We can all talk, but I'm conscious of going on too long. So you've helped me piece together some of the timeline for myself. As I said from the very beginning, I wanted to try and understand what I was doing when I was 16, 17, because I wasn't a heavy drinker when I was 16, 17. I was going out and I was hearing this amazing music. I didn't really pay much attention to who the DJs were, but I always knew later on down the years just how important and how big the scene was. But you've just given me, if it's at all possible, given me an even higher respect for a lot of the names that you mentioned. Many people will get to see this recording, and I salute each and every one of them. And of course, so many people that we have lost in recent times as well, right?
Of course.
All of us, we've lost very, very good friends and key members of the family that helped bring this all together. And if anybody has enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully this is going to work, because and they want to see what Frenchie's talking about. Is my mic still on? Yes, my mic is still on. So it's here. You're doing a big reveal this Sunday on your radio show, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay.
But basically, what it is, as I said, it's been kind of a little bit guarded because of Boris and the government, how they're going to enforce how clubs can operate a realistic business. So it's been a bit sporadic in how I could give information out, because it's pointless in really giving out lots of information if the event can't go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just going on a gut feeling, and it seems like with the jabs, with the vaccinations and everything, that we might have more of a possibility where the event can go ahead this year in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to announce on my radio show on Sonic Stream, midday, 12 o'clock, I'm going to announce the details of of the venue, of the DJs, the price. So I will announce everything on Sunday, the 26th, this week on Sonic Stream Radio.
Fantastic. Sonic Stream, 12 o'clock. Let's go back to the video. All the information on there. I know so many people are going to love that, and I know that so many people are going to be tagging their friends. You got to listen to this. You got to listen. You got to check. You got to name check. We talked about that time. Remember when we went to the farm? Yeah. All that was covered, but there's still so much more. Bruce, thank you so much for joining me, mate.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, mate. And there's still so much. The roots of what you began, the roots of what you were born into, then progressed into the broken beat scene, which we need to talk about another time.
Definitely.
That's a whole nother story. There's a whole nother story about Frenchie, you and I working together, me coming and working with you in the record store, as well as also being on the radio, and so on and so forth. But we'll save all that for another time. So I'm going to bid you both farewell now. I'm just going to say a couple of goodbyes to everybody, and I'm going to unceremoniously kick you off my Zoom, and I'll send you a message later, gentlemen.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care, Andy. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Bruce.
Take care. Thank you, French.
See you later. Right.
Bye.
Bye.
So my buttons that were meant to be working aren't working. Usually I would have kicked them out, and but what I can actually see here, the poll did work. And what was your favourite music era in Birmingham when you were starting to watch that? The answers: the 80s soul and funk, 64%, and the rave and house scene in Birmingham, 36%. No surprises for me there. Of course, we all look back on those 80s with such fond memories. Did you enjoy that? I've created that little graphic for myself to talk about in a couple of weeks' time. I've got a whole different angle that I'm going to be doing these conversations now. Even just by doing it on my own wall, I've got more people viewing live, so that's great. But we always get a fair few hundred people coming back and watching it. It's not about the quantity, it's all about the quality of people watching. But if we can get to reach more people, that's the important thing. So thank you for being here, all of you guys live. Let me just go and run through everybody that was commenting. Blackwax, Justin, Clive, thank you for your input, mate. Very, very much welcomed. Victoria, thank you very much. Also E-double, anybody else that was there that didn't leave a comment that was enjoying that. Respect. I forgot that I'd put that picture up in the corner. No real reason for it to be there, but next weekend it's finally here. I can finally say that I've got my own event coming up here in Spain. Bruce touched on it earlier, so I don't even know why that. I can't even remember now why I put that picture there. And of course Bulldog is there as well. Good old Mr. Donald Anderson. If you ever seen Donald Anderson commenting, that's the legendary Bulldog that we talk about. Right, guys, girls, that's it from me. Taking up way too much of your time. I am going to schedule something in with those boys sooner rather than later. I've also got quite a few Birmingham legends big legends across the scenes, trying to coordinate everyone to do tests, make sure their internet's strong, blah blah blah. It's proving to be a bit of a nightmare, but I will soldier on because there's more of these stories that absolutely need to be shared. Okay, so thank you for being here. I am going to get out of here now, and I'll say thank you very much. You take care.